You're good to go.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to the December 9th, 2021 regular meeting of the Financial Advisory Commission. We'll call that meeting to order. We have with us commission members Bob Burton, Ed Meehan, Frank Brown, and Faye Curry. There she is. Welcome, commission members. I see Jim Cardillo is not with us yet. Hopefully he'll be here shortly. I haven't heard from him that he's not coming. We also have alderpersons Ross Arnett and Ellie Tierney. Good morning, alderpersons.
Good morning.
And Jody Dickinson, Finance Director. Kim Bronski from Finance Department. Ashley Leonard from the Office of Law. And Madeline Harrell from City of Annapolis TV. So welcome, everybody. And Wynn Farrow, did I mention your name? If I didn't, I apologize. So just make sure you're noted for the record.
Thank you, Fred. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
That Fred is fine. I like to be informal. So I sent out in my email December 4th, a proposed agenda. You all had an opportunity to review it, commission members. Assuming you have any revisions or corrections, additions, deletions to the agenda. If not, entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Bob Burton made the motion and Frank Brown seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. The agenda is approved. Next, we have approval of minutes of November 10th, 2021 meeting. They were sent out again on November 4th. I'm sorry, December 4th. And you'll note that they are much abbreviated and the format, as I mentioned in the last meeting, is in accordance with new directions from the city regarding minutes of meetings of boards and commissions. So having said that, assuming that you all had an opportunity to review the minutes, are there any questions, comments? Bob Burton.
Yes, Fred, I'm really uncomfortable with the brevity of the minutes. I would kind of like to know the rationale behind the directive that came down that asked for this brevity. Minutes of these meetings, particularly commissions such as ours, are the only written record that exists for our deliberations. And really the brevity, as we see in these minutes dated November 10th, really gives the reader now or at any time in the future, whether that reader be a citizen or whether it be a commission member trying to review what was discussed in a previous meeting, it's just not there. From a archive perspective, to get a better understanding of some of the issues that not only this commission but other commissions and standing committees of the the city that involve citizens, there's just nothing there. It gives you nothing for what really occurred at the meeting other than just a topic headline, and that's it. So
as I understand,
I would like to have more of a rationale for why the brevity is so brevitis, so to speak.
Okay, I'm going to ask Kim to respond to that as best she can. That may be an issue for Hillary, but from whom I believe the directive came. But Kim, can you try and respond to this? As you note, I think I made a comment to you when you sent me these minutes, when I reviewed them, that they were awful brief. So do you know, can you explain the thinking behind what I'll call these action minutes as opposed to discussion minutes?
Yes, this is Kim. I attended the training
given by the mayor's office, which was spearheaded by Hillary Raftovich and the city attorney. They promulgated the new format, and I was following their guidance. So I will say that I recall from the training that there was two themes that were being covered. And that is, one was we were making our formats accessible to the handicapped. So that was one format change that came about through the issuance of standard agenda and standard minutes, is that people have a number of intellectual disabilities, et cetera. And so that was one of the themes. And the second theme from the city attorney, and I'm not sure Ashley would even be aware of at this point, what was stated was that it was to be kept extremely brief, and I did follow the format set forth. Now, having said that, there may be additional pushback or give and take, but I just followed the guidance and the training that was provided to me and others who support various boards and commissions.
Bob, thank you, Kim.
Let me be a little bit more direct in my concerns. The brevity of these minutes really reduce the transparency of what is going on here in city government and among the commissions and the standing committees that consist of citizens and elected officials. And this is not right, okay? The transparency, not only exists in the concept of a public meeting, which people may be observing this particular meeting on Zoom today, but transparency also exists in the minutes that take place for people who cannot attend and cannot be a part of the public meeting. And I think that the brevity of the minutes goes against the concept of transparency, and what is being discussed and what is being decided, or what is being recommended or advised upon. And this, to me, I'm very troubled by the brevity that's being directed, that these minutes be done in. And I just don't think that it, complies with transparency or the public record, for, what we have been traditionally known and required to have to provide, for the citizens of our city. So there you have it.
Okay, Bob, thank you very much for those comments. Bob, what I'm going to ask the commission is that we not approve these minutes today, that Bob, just send me an email if you would, outlining your concerns as you just articulated them, and I will take that and discuss it with the appropriate staff people and see, even if it's just for this commission, that we can get some sort of revision to the format to accomplish the objectives that you've outlined. And then we'll really have to be guided by whatever the final determination is. But I did, share in not so eloquent terms, but the concern to Kim when I saw these minutes, which appear to be even briefer than the minutes for the previous meeting, which we commented on. So go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, Fred, I think that we have the Office of Law online here. And I really think that the Office of Law ought to render an opinion as to whether, the brevity of minutes that are being asked comply with, maintaining a public record and the appropriate transparency as well. I think that I don't know whether the Office of Law weighed in on this, why the decision was being made, but if they did, then I'd like to see, what their opinion was on it. But if they have not had the opportunity to weigh in on this, the Office of Law should weigh in on this and render an opinion, as to whether the brevity that's being asked really complies with the, with the spirit and the requirements of transparency for the public record.
There are two issues. One is whether it technically or legally complies with the Open Meetings Act, Public Information Act, and whether Open Meetings Act, and they very well may. There's no directive in the Open Meetings Act as to the format of minutes or the content of minutes of meetings. But, that's only one half of the equation. The other half is, as you mentioned, the general transparency, for members of the public and for commission members, for posterity to know what the commission discussed and not only decided, but discussed as well, and rationale. So if you would, Bob, send me an email outlining your concerns and suggestions, I will then take it from there and see where we go with it. And then either we'll have these minutes or a revised set of minutes for consideration at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you, Fred.
Is there any
Okay.
objection from commission members to doing that?
No objection.
Hearing
None.
none, seeing none, let's proceed in that direction and we'll move on. But Bob, thank you very much for those comments and much appreciated.
Sure.
Next, we'll go down to reports. Jody, any general report from finance?
No, nothing in particular. We're really busy. We're trying to get the annual financial report finished. I was hoping to get that done in December, but I've asked for a January extension on that, so it may be January before we get it. But it's in pretty good shape, and my new assistant finance director is really helping a lot in pulling that together for me, so that I can take a more broad view of it when I review the results. We are starting the budget development for FY23. We have a work session next week with council members to start talking about their input as far as what we want to have in the FY23 budget. We're getting started with the union negotiation process, so that's absorbing some time. And I have, as you know, a new assistant finance director. We're trying to hire a new procurement director because Brian Snyder, who has been with us for many, many years, is retiring. And we have a potential candidate, but we haven't had an acceptance yet. And I have a couple other staff vacancies I'm trying to fill right now as well. So besides that, the AMRP process with the P3 that we're doing for the Hillman Garage is coming to a head now, and we're really coming down to the wire, trying to pull all agreements together. That's taking a bit of time too, of me. And other than that, no, operations as usual.
Great, thanks, Jody, appreciate it. City manager, good morning, David, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm actually driving, so sorry I had the meeting going between meetings. I think Jody covered everything that I would want to say. I would just add that as an update on the Resilience Financing Authority, next week, the mayor and the county executive will be doing an interview of the prospective executive director for that organization. Got really good candidates, applications for that position, and it's narrowed down to one now. That individual will be interviewed next week. So hopefully shortly thereafter, we'll have a new executive director and they can start forming that organization, putting together the board of directors and doing all of that. But otherwise, Jody covered all of the things that I would have added.
Okay, the other item kind of carried over from last meeting is the labor negotiations and the role that any role the facts might be able to play in that whole process before the new collective bargaining agreement or agreements are finalized. And I had made a request at the end of that meeting or at the end of that discussion that you go back and think about if there's any role that the FAC can play that would not jeopardize or compromise the let's say the confidentiality, if you will, of the negotiating process. So, and I think if you recall, there was concern that if the negotiations are completed and the FAC is presented with a completed collective bargaining agreement or agreements for review, what type of meaningful input can the FAC have at that particular time? After the fact, probably not a heck of a lot. So that was the concern that was expressed. That was, the request that I had, made to you to go back and, evaluate whether there's, anything, any role the FAC can have in the process before it's a fait accompli. So would you comment on that, please, Dave?
Sorry, I'm pulling in the garage.
Okay. Do you want us to defer this till you get up?
Yeah,
to
I'll
your-
in my, if we could just defer it by 5 minutes, then I can speak to it better.
Okay, good. I'll wait for you to come back on and we'll continue this discussion in a few minutes. What I'd like to do is go, I'm sorry, have Jim Cardillo, anything from the audit committee?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was not in attendance at the November 15 Audit Committee meeting, but I did watch the video subsequent to it. The majority of the discussion concerned the risk assessment process as their determination of what topics to address in the upcoming year. And the audit committee is in the process of trying to bring in a new member, which I guess it was some lack of clarity with regards to the timing of when the new person could be sworn in, and there was a delay from the Office of Law. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Any questions of Jim on his report about the audit committee? Seeing none, we'll move on. What I'd like to do is go down to the new business, Roman numeral 6, because those three items I think are fairly brief. The 2021 annual report for the FAC is due, I believe, on January 15th. There was a communication I received not too long ago, telling and reminding boards and commissions of the annual report requirement. Kim, I believe last year, you did a great job putting together a draft for us to review. Are you going to be taking care of that, or will you take care of that again this year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we're going to need to approve it at our next meeting, which is January 13th, a day or two before the due. So, Kim, if you would, as you typically do, put together a draft and send it to me for review. If I'm comfortable with it, then we can get it out to the other commission members for review prior to the meeting. And if I have any issues or questions, I'll let you know, and we can revise it as necessary.
Will do.
That sound like a fair game plan?
Affirmative.
All right. Any question from commission members about the annual report? Okay, seeing none, I was also reminded that we need to elect a chair and vice chair for 2022. I'm not asking that we do that today, but that we do it at the January 13th meeting. So if anybody has an interest in becoming chair or vice chair, let me know. Right now I'm chair and Bob Burden is vice chair. I'm not going to put Bob on the spot. I'm not going to put myself on the spot as to whether we want to continue, but just want to give a fair opportunity if anybody else is interested in either of those positions to just let me know. Any comments or questions about that? Nope. Seeing none, I sent out, I thought I had done it a while ago, but Kim, I believe, reminded me that we still need to approve the 2022 meeting schedule, which again, I sent out with my December 4th email, essentially the same type of schedule, unless otherwise advised, there will continue to be remote meetings the third Thursday of the month at 8 a.m. Any problem with that, or should we just continue that protocol? Seeing no objections or concerns to that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the 2022 meeting schedule for the Financial Advisory Commission as presented. Made by Fay, seconded by Ed. Was that no, Fay?
It's actually vice versa. Ed was first and I was second.
Okay.
Hey, that's okay. I can defer to Faye, no problem.
Okay. I just want to be technically correct.
Let the minutes reflect.
But they won't.
That joint motion and second were made by Fay and Ed. Any discussions? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the 2022 meeting agenda, signify by raising your hands and saying aye.
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 Okay. All commission members have approved, including me. So stand approved unanimously. So we don't forget, the next meeting will be January 13th, 2022 at 8 a.m. David, are you back with us yet? No, apparently not. Then let's go back up to unfinished business. Roman numeral 5A, spending affordability subcommittee. Bob, can you give us an update as to where you and Ed are with the work you're doing on spending affordability subcommittee?
Yeah, as noted in the last meeting, we did ask for any input or questions that from the commissioners or from our elected officials that they would like us to pursue or ask the different jurisdictions that we are, looking at. I did have a conversation with Alderman Ross Arnett on some of the areas that he would like us to focus on in our outreach. So I haven't received any other input, so we'll go with that. I do understand that Alderman Arnett, perhaps has some additional input, which I'd be happy to, discuss with him offline. That we don't, take up the time here of this meeting, for that, unless Alderman Arnett has, some thoughts that he wants to share now. Ed, do you have anything? Ed, do you have anything?
Well, the only thing I would say before Ross speaks, because I'm sure he has something he wants to put in, is my take is, Bob and I have discussed this and we have a pretty fair idea what it is we think we need to nail down. And obviously, welcoming any other input, from Ross or anyone else. And then I think we should be in a position where we can go off, finalize our work and come in with a final report at the January meeting for everyone's consideration. So I think that's our target.
Thank you, Ed and Bob. Alderman Arnett, you said you wanted to make a few comments now.
Yeah, quickly. I had a long conversation with John Hammond, and I've also read the Economic Outlook reports for December 4th, 2017, January 19th, 2019, January 29th, 2020, and January 28th, 2021. And I'm assuming from that sequence that there'll soon be another county report coming out fairly soon. It just seems to me like a natural for us to try to piggyback on the county and state model that's done for them through Towson University, the Regional Economic Studies Institute. But there are actually 3 other sources of information that they get their reports from. SAGE is a group we know. They get it from Moody. Global Insights, I don't really know. And then Towson. But I think there's 2 things that I would ask us to think about. One is how rigorous the assumption is that growth in personal income is a boundary for spending affordability. it seems to make some logic, but I'm not sure how scientifically rigorous that assumption is. If it's strong, then it's a pretty simple formula that they drop the growth in that in, and it not only controls the level of spending for the budget, but also for the bond funding. And boy, that's a pretty powerful tool. And I would say it's probably a fairly constraining tool as well. The other thing is that the difference between the city and the county is the relative importance of the property tax, where it's very big for us. It is in the model that the county and the state use, but, and I would turn to the finance director on this one. We were actually talking about this tangentially in a different meeting. So I think there might need to be some refocusing or a more robustness of the property tax role in terms of determining affordability. And then I think the last thing would be two things are, if we're going to go that route, then we need to put it into the budget and contact these people. I don't know how much they charge for the service that they give the county, and that could be a pretty important determinant. Uh, so I think we need to do that. And then in code, we need to be thinking already about how much are we bound by this? Is it a guideline, or is it something where it's a limit, just like we have our debt service affordability caps in the code? So I'm pretty excited about it. I think that is a lot of good people there. As I was mentioning before, one of my neighbors down the street works for BEA, and in the input output division, I want to talk to him, and I want to talk to Ross Deerdorf, both of them economists, like as am I, and talk about how robust we think that relationship is. But at a minimum, it seems to be a good source of guidance. So I am very enthusiastic about this model and being able to piggyback on the county.
Thank you, Alderman Arnett. Jody has her hands up, and then Bob Burden.
Yes, you talked about whether or not it constrains, will constrain us, we'd have to stay within the limits. On the county side, the Spending Affordability Committee issues their report, and the county executive may or may not follow those recommendations when developing their budget. So it has no binding requirements at all on what happens in the budget. And in some cases in the past, when I was there, the executive would just not follow the limits, the spending increase limits, or other recommendations that were in the report. They would not follow them on occasion. So it's recommendations. It's a good analysis, and I think it's very useful. But they don't legally constrain the budget development to those recommendations.
Thank you, Jody. Bob?
I would quickly add, it could be a source of discussion for the union negotiations also.
Bob?
No, I was just going to say that in the report that both Ed and I put together about a year ago when we started this process, we did outline in some degree of detail, as well as submitted supporting documents on how the county and the state pursue spending affordability. And some of that report certainly, backs up the information that Ross had received from John Hammond, and also the how and what research organizations are used to produce the data and stuff like that. So we can pull from that earlier report and add that to, our final report that we submit to the FAC when we compile it. Let me just say that in the research that we've done to date in the different jurisdictions that we're looking at, the spending affordability concept is codified in most of them. However, I did not see any requirement in any of the jurisdictions that the elected officials, whether it be, the council or the chief elected officer, be that a mayor or county executive, was bound by a requirement to follow, the recommendations of a spending affordability or a budget affordability function. Those reports that were issued by those entities in those jurisdictions were advisory. So yes, it could be codified in terms of the existence of the report shall be issued, da 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 da. But we saw nothing, that imposed a requirement that the report and the opinion issued by such a function, was mandated to be followed.
Thank you, Bob. Any other comments or questions on this particular topic before we move on? No, okay, look forward to hearing again from you guys next month. Hopefully with a final report, if not a final, close to final. So,
Ross, I'll connect with you offline and discuss further what you have. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
thanks, guys. David, good morning again. Nice to see you with us in person. So can we just finish up the discussion we started to have while you were in transit about where the collective bargaining negotiations are, and if there's any role at all, and if so, what that the FAC can play in providing any kind of input or guidance prior to the collective bargaining agreement being fait accompli. Really no meaningful input can be provided, even though our code directive specifically gives us authority or responsibility to review collective bargaining agreements. So with that long-winded intro, let me ask you for your comments.
Sure, thank you. And you'll recall at the last meeting, you asked that I touch bases with City Attorney Lyles to get a legal opinion, which I did. And he reviewed it, and he gave me feedback. And I asked him if he was going to do a legal opinion or if he was just going to come and speak to you all at the meeting. And he had intended to come and speak, but he's out of town today, or the last part of the week. But I can tell you that, and I don't want to speak for him because I think that he probably should speak as well, but his feeling was basically the same as mine that we talked about last time, is that we need to go through the whole process of negotiating the CBA, come up with a version of each of the CBAs that's going to go to council, and to route that to the Financial Advisory Commission first. And that's what the charter says. It says review of CBAs prior to execution. I guess you can interpret that pretty broadly, but his interpretation based on the operational aspects of getting these put together is that as soon as we come up with draft agreements that are going to go to council for approval, that they be routed to the FAC for review. Any comments that the FAC has would then go to council as part of their deliberations on whether they're going to approve or not the CBAs. So again, I think City Attorney Lyles would be happy to come back to the next meeting. He should be back in town, but that was what his opinion was about the review of the CBAs.
Okay, thank you, David. I see Assistant City Attorney Leonard has just made herself viewable, and welcome.
Yeah, I got rid of the kids.
Got rid of the kids. Okay. Anything you need to or want to add to what David said?
I can let you know that I did talk to the city attorney before he left, and David's conveyance of his thoughts and his legal opinion on it is accurate. He is reading the city code language fairly narrowly, and that you get a review before execution, and that your primary job is to provide advisory recommendations to the council before they adopt it. He also did have concerns that if your commission gets involved in too early of a process, there's some confidentiality issues, some negotiation leverage issues that because you as a commission are subject to Open Meetings Act, will cause some problems. Whereas when you're doing negotiations without sort of a public body involved, you can keep them more sort of, you can keep your negotiation strategy sort of tight and confidential. If you bring in public bodies, then you're bringing in the Open Meetings Act as well, possibly too early in the process, and could jeopardize negotiations.
I appreciate that, Ashley, and I'm not, Bob, I'll get you in a second. I'm not saying I disagree with that. One observation with respect to the Open Meetings Act is that going back to my files, I do see where a good number of years ago, this commission did meet in closed session under the Open Meetings Act to receive confidential information from the administration on some topic. So there are ways to deal with that, if the administration wants our input. I think I don't necessarily disagree from a legal standpoint as to what the code says as to our responsibility. What I would just ask is that even though we may not be mandated to review and comment, provide input before a final document is negotiated, I think that the fact stands ready, willing, and able to provide any guidance that the administration might want to receive during the process. And I understand that that is purely within the purview of the administration, should they choose to, or if they choose to seek our guidance on any particular issue. We certainly have made our views on different financial matters known over the years. And I think I would hope that the administration would take those views into consideration as they are proceeding through the negotiation process. And I know we're going to be talking just in a couple minutes about pensions and benefits. And that's another significant component of I think, maybe of the negotiation process. So Bob, I see you had your hand up.
I just had a question for David and Ashley. If I understand correctly, what both of you are conveying, I don't think I heard anything in what you said that would preclude the Financial Advisory Commission from rendering an opinion to the administration prior to negotiations beginning as to what the Financial Advisory Commission would recommend are important points that should be taken under consideration and, should be, part of the negotiations. I can fully understand, that the FAC may not have and probably shouldn't have a seat at the negotiating table per se. But nonetheless, as an advisory body, I would assume that we would not be precluded from rendering an advisory opinion as to topics and issues that perhaps should be part of the negotiating process prior to negotiations going forward. Is that correct?
I agree. I'll let Ashley speak after I finish speaking. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that would be helpful. I think, your role as advising the city on financial issues, that's right within that realm of responsibility. So I personally would appreciate that sort of input.
No concerns from me for that sort of input.
Okay, given that, when would you need an advisory type of opinion from the FAC, prior to your negotiations beginning? What is the timeline that we're looking at if we were, to do that?
Yes, so we've actually already officially kicked off the negotiations. So probably sooner is better than later. Because we're already having discussions and setting the ground rules and exchanging proposals and those sorts of things. So sooner is better.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything else on that topic? Now, David, yes, Alderwoman.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just have a clarification on advisory versus recommendations? And how they'll translate into, discussions at the table.
Yeah, I can't speak to that personally, because that concept didn't come necessarily from me. But I'm not sure that there's a significant difference, and I'll ask Bob to comment on that. And the fact as a body has not decided that it wants to, unilaterally make recommendations or give an advisory opinion or whatever. We haven't talked about over what topics, what subjects, what matters. So I think that there's internal stuff that the commission has to talk about before we even get there. But Bob, can you address if you do have any thought difference between advisory opinion and recommendation?
Well, let me approach this from a broader perspective here. The Financial Advisory Commission, over the years, it has been serving the city, the mayor and the city council. We, have touched upon many issues, and we certainly understand and appreciate the impact that labor costs have on the city budget. And we have addressed issues in the past, and we'll be addressing some today under pension and retired benefits review, that are part of the negotiation process, or would probably be topics that would come up in a negotiating process. So in that sense, we have a body of knowledge and experience over the years as a commission on understanding these issues that involve labor costs and how they impact, the city's financial, situation and budget preparation and so forth. So when it comes down to issuing an advisory opinion, I would assume it would follow the format that the FAC has, utilized over the years when we do issue advisory opinions to both the city council and to the mayor and to the administration. And I would assume that they would be received as such, and they can either be accepted, adopted, rejected, ignored, or whatever, has occurred in the past. There would be no, mandate or requirement that they would need to follow what we're recommending, but it would certainly be on the record that the Financial Advisory Commission has issued, such an advisory type opinion. And it just go forward from there. Does that make sense?
Well,
Bob, I guess I wouldn't.
Let me give, wait a minute, David, let me give Alderwoman Tierney an opportunity to respond if she has any other follow-up, since you were responding to her.
Yeah, let me just explain the basis for my question, which was the attachments to the agenda, which very succinctly categorize them as recommendations, I assume to be useful for today's meeting. So I see recommendations different than advisory, and that I don't know how to prevent that work from being in vain, and how those quote unquote recommendations can be utilized without jeopardizing Open Meetings Act and the importance of these negotiations being Loctite. Does that make sense? I guess that question is for Fred.
I don't have a response to it, Alderwoman.
Okay.
I really haven't, thought about that. And again, the attachment was just a talking document for the commission meeting today. And it was, to the extent that there were any recommendations, that was a recommendation from one member of the commission. It's not been adopted by the commission. And, as I'm thinking about it, most of the advisory opinions, as they've been referred to, that we've issued in the past, have been in response to specific things that we're commenting on. Here, the city is going into labor negotiations with an agenda that is within the purview of the city manager and the city negotiating team, and is not, to my knowledge, out there for public view. So I'm not quite, I have to think about, how, the fact would be providing advisory opinions on, topics that we really don't know the substance or details of discussions. So I really don't want to get into a big discussion about that right now, but I'm just having a little difficulty processing the process, so to speak. David, you had your hand up, I think.
Yeah, I couple of thoughts, I guess. And maybe we're parsing words unnecessarily, but to me, input / recommendations / advice are all sort of the same things, and they're non-binding, and they're provided to help benefit the process that we're going through, and we're going to take them as such. And I wouldn't expect that there would be a lot of surprises, because we talk about these things almost every month. So I think it's sort of just a summarization of the things that we talk about. I think, Bob, I guess this is directed to you. When you send these recommendations or input to the negotiations, it's going to be along the lines of the things that we always talk about. So I wouldn't expect there to be any big surprises in the things that you send to us. I think we understand generally where you all are coming from, and so it would be helpful to have that summarized on a piece of paper. But again, I think we have an idea of what those will be.
Yes, David. I mean, that's, basically where I was coming from. I mean, yeah, most of what would be in there would be what we've been discussing over the years here at the FAC, and any information that we have as to how, labor costs impact, the city's financial situation. So.
Okay, I think we've had enough of that discussion. It's been very helpful, and thank everybody who participated in it. And
Fred,
yes.
Fred, I think Ed Meehan had his hand up.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that. Ed?
Yeah, so, no, that's right. Sorry. I don't want, well, all I'll say is actually very brief is, and again, I don't want to belabor it. My point is that we had a long discussion last time, and I think people, participated and who recall that, know very well the views. My personal view, bottom line, is that I got involved with this commission to try to be of assistance, and I heard from the way the code was described that the FAC has a role, including but not limited to review, and I think we can be of more assistance than we have been, and I'd like to figure out a way that we get involved in the process, bearing in mind the concerns over confidentiality, which are valid, and recognizing that sometimes it can help in negotiations if the administration can indicate quite correctly that it's under pressure from an advisory commission to take certain positions. So I think this commission can be of great value, both in articulating what we think we can provide as suggestions, as well as helping the administration accomplish certain goals. And at some point here fairly soon, we will get into a discussion about pensions, which obviously is an issue that will play into negotiations. And my only concern is that it would be good to get in front of the process wherever we can, rather than be behind the process. So I think everybody's trying to get to the right place, and we just have to work together to get that accomplished.
Thank you very much, Ed. Other comments and questions before we move on to pensions and benefits? Hearing and seeing none. Thanks for that discussion, and to be continued. Next, pension and retirement benefits review. I sent out materials that I actually sent out some of them previously, and the ones I sent out on December 4th included, Ed Meehan's comments based upon his review and analysis of the materials that I submitted, which have been provided previously by Jody. Comparisons of City of Annapolis pension benefits with those of other jurisdictions. There was one handout, I believe, from the actuary with some charts, and then there was another Excel spreadsheet, I believe that Jody prepared, or somebody in her office may have prepared. No, well, anyway, Excel spreadsheet outlining different pension provisions in other jurisdictions in the regional area, quite comprehensive. So I asked Ed to take over this part of the meeting and kind of present, what he did and his thoughts and findings, and any recommendations or suggestions he may have for the commission going forward. So Ed, let me turn it over to you. And thank you very much for your work in kind of reviewing all this and analyzing it, and look forward to your comments.
Sure. Thanks, Fred. And I think I can do the overview here in a fairly succinct fashion. What I tried to do is send to Fred, and I know Fred has now distributed it to everybody, summarize in a short email what I thought would be some points for consideration.
And those were provided in the materials, I believe, that I sent with the meeting notice.
Yes, I believe they are in there. And so I don't want to take everybody's time by running back through that, but let me take a couple of minutes here just as an intro and an overview to hopefully lead to some dialogue and discussion here. Is the idea in my head was it would be very helpful to understand what are the city's goals in terms of pensions and retirement related benefits. What are we trying to achieve? And is it that we wish to be competitive in attracting and retaining employees? Who do we think our competition is for these slots? Just try to understand what are we trying to accomplish, and then take a look at what we have implemented to see how we stack up with other jurisdictions. And I thought the information that was provided by Jody and others was very thorough. Frankly, I was surprised that there was so much information available, and I thought it was very, very well organized in a way that it takes some attention to detail when you're working through Excel sheets and all of that. But we do have a wealth of information, and I think we're in a position to be able to get a very good understanding of where the city compares on a variety of basic pension related points to surrounding jurisdictions. So what I did in the email, which I view as sort of my report through Fred, was to pick out what I thought were sort of a handful of key points or key comparators. And to touch on them very briefly, in each case, my suggestion was these are a handful of points that should be analyzed and considered from the perspective of, do we have a pension and retirement system that's in place that meets the goal? And part of that analysis is, how do we compare to other jurisdictions? So if we're far out of line in one way or another, then that goes to the question of, why are we out of line? And if we're out of line to satisfy a particular goal of the city, then being out of line can be justified. And if not, it has to beg the question of, why are we out of line? So to take an easy example, and it's a big picture issue, is the difference between a defined benefit and a defined contribution. Defined benefit plans are set up in a way so that the employee knows, come hell or high water, unless the city's finances can't afford it, that they will retire with X dollars. it's targeted at a particular outcome. And that can put a real burden upon the entity that's providing the pension, in this case, the city. So if the stock market's doing great, then the city gets the benefit of that. And right now we're on a pretty good roll. But there have been times when other jurisdictions, and we've seen municipal bankruptcies that have taken place where those burdens in the good years don't seem so heavy, but then in the rough years, they can be devastating. So private industry, and I'm probably not telling anybody anything that we don't already know, but private industry very, very much over the last 15, 20 years has been moving more and more and more to the defined contribution concept. So it'll be negotiated that X percent or X dollars will be provided, and that the outcome will be dependent upon the investment choices that are made. It puts a little more responsibility and opportunity, in my view, on the individual participants, and relieves that sort of risk of a major swing up or down. So one of the things I wanted to get a sense of from looking at the available data is, what path has the city chosen? Where are we? And my big picture take is the city focuses on the defined benefit plans exclusively, and other jurisdictions that would be our comparators seem to have a mix. Now, I don't know, and the data didn't reveal that was available to us, why are other jurisdictions in a mix of defined benefit and defined contribution, depending upon the type of employee, whether it's public safety or civil servant in some other fashion. Other jurisdictions have been able to do a mix. So my recommendation to this group is really as simple as considering, why is the city focusing exclusively on defined benefit? Are we achieving a goal that the city has? Are we satisfied with the risk that brings? And if not, what steps can be taken, and over what period of time, to shift away from defined benefit to defined contribution? That ties back to the last topic we were just going over, which of course, is union negotiations. And it's part of what I was getting at earlier, that I think it would be great if we could get more and more in front of the goals to try to help implement them. So I picked that one out as an example because I think it's sort of a basic issue. And David, I saw David's hand go up, and so David, yes, please weigh in.
Yeah, I guess I just have a really fundamental question about your analysis, Ed, and that is, are you looking only at the police and fire pension, which the city controls and the city has all the financial risk for? Or are you looking broader at the state of Maryland system that the rest of us, the non-public safety employees, participate in? And the city pays a certain amount, the employee pays a certain amount, but there's not a lot of financial risk for the city under that program. Are you looking at both of those, or are you focused mostly on the police and fire system?
Well, my analysis was limited to the data that was circulated earlier, and just trying to pick out which direction we're in. So I'd say I would necessarily be limited to the burden that the city is shouldering. And so, and in part, David, I guess I take it that, one of the issues is there is not as much of a risk as I might have perceived because of the state backup.
David,
Right.
any response?
I think Jody's going to respond to that.
Okay, I'm sorry, Jody, I missed you.
Yeah, so we have to think of it in the two components, police and fire. As David said, we have control over, so we can change the terms if we get that buy-in from public safety. But you will find very few public safety municipalities and governments in this area that have anything other than a defined benefit plan for their public safety employees. So that's one separate issue. On the other side, where all the other employees are enrolled in the state pension, we don't control anything. And we don't control the risk. They tell us what we have to contribute. They tell us what the vesting period is. It's all controlled by the state. They tell us who has to and who cannot enroll in the plan. So everything is dictated by them. We have absolutely no control. However, that is the group where we would have more flexibility at setting up our own defined contribution plan for, let's say, new employees going into a defined contribution plan and participating less in the, not put new employees in the state plan. I don't know what all maneuvers we'd have to make. I won't call maneuvers. We'll probably have to take certain steps with the state to get permission to do that. And I don't know what that process is, but that's where we have more flexibility and the opportunity to move to defined contribution. So that's all. I just wanted to put that in to the conversation.
Well, I think if I could say, I think that kind of takes us right to the heart, maybe, Jody, is, you know, for those of you who had a chance to take a look at the email report, I picked out, you know, these 5 points, which was the DB versus DC, but also normal retirement age, early retirement, vesting, and employee contributions. So I thought those would be sort of a big handful to grasp and not to get into, you know, a lot of other detail, but those would be 5 sort of basic points. And what I was seeing from the available data was there was some variability on the Excel in terms of different jurisdictions. But maybe the basic question is, to what extent does the city have the ability to take different paths that would be designed to limit the city's burden? Because you see, you know, what I did is each of these 5 areas, my thought was we should step back and take a look at why are we doing what we are doing? And to the extent the city is constrained, is there any ability to have any flexibility there? And if there's not, then why not? And just, you know, understand that, because that's not something that was clear to me, at least from looking at the available data. And when we do have some flexibility, to think in terms of, you know, what changes we want to make. So I didn't want to come into this meeting saying, do the following 5 things. I don't think that I've got enough background for that. And I don't think that's necessarily appropriate for, you know, one person to come in and say that. But I flagged these 5 areas thinking that these are 5 basic issues that it would be very helpful in this commission to run through. Why are we doing what we're doing? Do we have flexibility? And how might we recommend some changes be considered?
Jody, I'd like to ask you a question, if I may. Have you or anybody to your knowledge affiliated with the city, you know, undertaken an analysis of whether there will be cost savings to the city to set up a alternative defined contribution plan as an alternative to the state plan?
So have we undertook it? It's possible. And like I said, we would have to work with the state on that, because when we join the state plan, we commit to putting all of our employees who are eligible into that plan. So
Okay.
I know that other governments have cut themselves off from that. So I don't know what that process is, if it's only new employees and you keep existing in there, or if you can move over employees that are already enrolled in the state. So we can do it to that group. It has been done. It's going to take some work with the state. I think it's something we could look into, because it's definitely going to eventually shift the risk off the city. And although we don't have direct risk for the state plan, if that state plan starts to hit market bumps and there's a downturn in the market, the state will start jacking up our contribution percentage and the employee percentage, which is 7% at this time. And that's relatively high for pension plans, for employees to be required to contribute 7% of their income. And that's what the state did a few years ago when they started having some market issues. They bumped up the employees percentage in that plan. So we have kind of an indirect risk where that plan is concerned. And if we're bearing a lot of pressure from the markets, we're going to see increased contribution levels. And I also wanted to comment that the points you made, besides defined benefit versus defined contribution, we could propose that for public safety. But in this area, it's not going to be an easy task. It's not that it hasn't been done, but the actuary had said he wasn't aware of any in this region that have done it. And on the other points, such as retirement age and early retirement age, those are things that we have control over in the police and fire plan. So those points are well taken too, is that those are things that we could try to change from this end on police and fire that could have cost savings for the city.
So yeah, thanks, Jody, because maybe then, I guess ultimately what I'd be getting at is noticing that there are some differentials in those areas, you know, with the retirement age, early retirement age, vesting, contribution, you know, those areas, whether it's feasible to undertake some analysis of what the cost savings would be if we made changes. And then, like anything else, it's a cost and a benefit, because I know if things are going to be made, shall we say, less generous or less advantageous to an employee, then we may be affecting an employee's decision to stay with the city, and we may be affecting the ability to attract the talent that we're looking for. So everything is a give and take. But that was what I was hoping to raise here, is that there are these variances, and if there was a way to understand why the variances exist and what the benefits of seeking some change financially might be.
David, or Jody, let me ask you this question. You're about to go into negotiations, or you just started going into negotiations with police and fire and the AFSCME, and I guess you don't negotiate with the unclassified, but what's your sense as once this round of negotiations is completed and collective bargaining agreements are entered into, when do you think we'll go through this process again? How many years down the road?
I would say that we don't expect to do another longer term, a 4-year agreement. It's going to be shorter than 4 years. So this current CBA that is just wrapping up, it was a 4-year agreement. That ended up feeling too long to us. So it's going to be shorter than that. Whether it's 2 years or 3 years or 1 year, we still need to have that discussion with the unions, but almost certainly won't be a 4-year agreement again.
Ed, if I may, do you have any thoughts as to what the outcome of this discussion that we're having right now should be? And Jim, I'll get back to you in a second.
My sense, well, step back. The reason why I suggested and volunteered to take a look at this was to prompt the kind of dialogue that I think we're having here. The outcome to me would be to step back to understand why we are seeing these differences in some of these key areas, and to consider what the benefits would be financially of making any changes. And then that can be measured against what's feasible. So I think the outcome here would be to figure out how we can get some financial impact data if we make certain changes, so that if, for example, you raise the retirement age by 5 years, well, what do we think the benefits of that are financially, and what insight do we think that would be able to be obtained in terms of, is that going to discourage new hires? Is that going to discourage retention? Because it's a multifaceted problem. So the outcome is probably to study some financial issues, have some dialogue on where we think that might affect the city's larger goals, and then ultimately feed that maybe in advance into the next round of negotiations where some changes could be made. So that's where I would see it. We're sort of at the beginning of what is going to be probably a multi-meeting discussion over some time.
Okay. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that you're not pressing for a decision on point A, B, C, D, and E. So I was going to say, I certainly don't have enough information. And you raised a lot of very, very good questions in your summary that are going to require further analysis and review by people a lot smarter on these types of issues than I am and that most of us are. Jim.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions surrounding the two separate plans, and I think part of it has been answered, but I just want to get some clarity. With the public safety plan, we are the sole sponsors. It's a single employer plan. I'm just restating what I heard. With the city employees plan, the non-public safety, we're a participant in a multi-employer plan sponsored by the state of Maryland. And I think, am I correct in understanding, we do have the option of removing city employees from that plan, either current or future, if we so elect. Is that correct?
So my current, I don't know. We
Okay.
have to, if we decided to do anything different with our non-public safety employees, we'll have to have a conversation with the state. I
Okay.
know it's been done because I am aware of other jurisdictions that have defined contribution plans that had been in another state plan or had their own plan. So I know there's a way to do it. I just don't know what it entails and
Okay.
whether that overall would be a good move or not a good move for the city. So there's some investigation there that mainly about the setup of the state plan and how, if we wanted to, can we and how can we extract ourselves from the relationship? If it's only new employees, we can put them somewhere else. But then, the state may have rules and restrictions on that. So I really can't say.
Okay.
It
Thanks.
has been done. I just don't know how they do
Okay.
it.
I'm just trying to plot forward for Ed and everyone what we are allowed to do and what we do not have control over. So for non-public safety city employees, it is possible we may not be able to take current employees and put them on a different plan, but we may be able to establish a new plan for new hires. There's a potential of freezing the benefit for current enrollees or what. I just want to make sure that we know what we're allowed to do.
Thank you, Jim. Bob.
And I defer to Bob.
Oh, Bob.
No, I think the questions, actually, this is a good discussion, particularly for the non-public safety employees. And Jody, I think the questions that you raise, it'd be very helpful, Fred, if the fact were to, follow Jody's lead and have Jody do the necessary research that she needs to do and report back to the fact so that we can better understand exactly what the state plan is, versus the city going in a different direction. So I would encourage that, Jody, that, you assist the fact in helping us better understand, what's involved in the city participating in the state plan, what are the parameters that the city has to follow if it, as it currently is participating in the state plan, what would we gain or lose by, either staying with the state plan or moving into a different direction. That would be tremendously helpful in the fact, better understanding, the issues, that are under discussion here.
Jody, is that something you think that you can do within, the next millennium? With everything else that you got going on?
So I'll have to make some inquiries and it may be something that the HR manager would help me with. She has connections there that she'll be able to be more effective probably in that process. So I will reach out to her and see. I don't think it's going to be done by your next meeting, but we'll see if I can maybe try for something in the February meeting. We have some other things going on right now involving the HR manager and myself. And so it's kind of taking up a bit of our time right now.
That'll be greatly appreciated, Jody. Thank you very much. And I know we really, not to belabor the point, but appreciate all the work you do in support of the fact. So thank you very much. It sounds like, we're a little bit at a stopping point of this particular discussion. I think it's been very helpful. What I've gathered from it, though, is that it doesn't seem like, it seems like this is a longer term issue, longer term discussion, and I'm not sure, how much, if any, concrete, guidance, we can provide or will provide with respect to the current round of collective bargaining negotiation. But that having been said, David, you certainly are aware of the issues, that Ed has raised and that we have collectively discussed here without coming to any recommendations or conclusion. At least you're aware of the issues going into, the negotiations. And I don't know, and nor am I asking you to divulge, what the administration's negotiating strategy is going to be with respect to the retirement system benefits. But just Bob.
No, I was just going to ask David. David was discussing the potential terms of any future agreement. Is my understanding correct that if the terms exceed a year, if they go 2 years, 3 years, or whatever, that there are options to, for reopening each year? Is that negotiated as part of the labor agreement, these reopenings, or and if so, what are the parameters involved in those reopenings? That may, present an opportunity, for the city to come back and start raising, some additional issues for potential discussion with the, with the unions.
Oh, that's a really great question, because part of the issue with the current 4-year CBAs is there was no reopener clause added to those. So you've got 4 years without the ability to reopen, and that's why each year in the spring when we tried to take up discussions with the unions when we were when COVID occurred, we had difficulties because there was no reopener. So we intend to have that as part of these. What that's going to look like needs to be negotiated. It needs to be negotiated to even include that in the CBA, but certainly that's something that we're interested in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions, discussions about this particular topic? If not, again, Ed, thank you very, very much for your work to date. Greatly appreciated, and thanks for leading the discussion. Thanks to everybody for, I think, a good, healthy, substantive discussion of a very complex topic. And I look forward to, hearing more about it in the months to come. And Jody, thanks for being willing to, take on a little bit more review, dig a little bit deeper. Hopefully that will provide some good guidance to us going forward. And this definitely will be back on the agenda for at least continuation of discussion to some degree at the next meeting. that brings us, I think, to the end of all the agenda topics. Does anybody else have anything for the good of the order? If not, entertain a motion to adjourn. And our next meeting again is January 13th, 8 a.m. by Zoom. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Jim Cardillo.
For the good of the order, I wish everyone a happy holiday, and I look forward to working with everyone in 22.
And just on that note, let's remember there's a new administration. Our terms run coterminous with each administration. So we continue to serve until our successors are appointed and qualified. Our successors may be each of us again, or it may be somebody else for one or more seats. And we do have one vacancy, which has not been filled for many, many months. So anyway, I share, happy holidays. So Jim made the motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
And second, let me see somebody's hand. Nobody wants to adjourn. We're a happy family. Frank, okay. Motion made and seconded. Alderman Tierney, nice to have you with us. And Alderman Arnett, as always, great to have you with us. Look forward to continued participation. And assuming nobody wants to stay, all in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we are officially adjourned.